Hi there. Um, I just want to talk a little bit about permissive parenting as it relates to connected parenting, or maybe doesn't relate. And the reason that I started thinking about this the other day is because I shared with someone recently that I felt like sometimes in my son's younger years that I had been permissive with him at times. And as soon as I said it, I felt these knots in my stomach, but I wasn't really sure why. And I reflected on it a little bit more, and I realized that part of it was because I realized that labeling myself as permissive really felt like judging myself, right? Um, and maybe as if I'd done some of my parenting wrong. And I don't believe that's entirely true. And I think it also, the knots in my stomach also came from just not feeling great to be judging myself, of course. But just to give you a little bit of background on that, when I looked up parenting online or permissive parenting online, it also gets described as indulgent or reluctant to set limits, right? And I think that's the little piece that can feel triggering sometimes for us as a parent if we're trying to respond to our kids and connect to them, right? And permissive parenting also gets described as responsive or nurturing. So here's my more compassionate take on this topic. That doesn't involve the judgment, because if you've been listening to me for a while, you'll know that I'm always looking for ways that we can use compassionate language, both with ourselves and our kids, and stay connected as opposed to judging ourselves. So the words permissive or authoritative aren't really accurate when we're talking about connected parenting. And they're not really relevant because the foundational beliefs and philosophy underneath your approach when you're using connected parenting are from a completely different paradigm, right? So for me, my goal and my driving force throughout all of my parenting years has been to stay connected with my son. And in hindsight, in the moments where I was struggling with how to set limits, it was because I was also struggling with how to stay connected. Right. And what we tend to do when we're, especially if we've been raised either in an authoritarian situation or a permissive situation, is we often tend to swing in the opposite direction from how we were parented. And subconsciously, what we're trying to do is find ways to prevent inflicting a similar wound that as what we experienced when we were kids. But it doesn't really work out that way. We end up just kind of swinging to the other end of this spectrum unless we do our healing work around it. So to go back to what my point is here, what I was really struggling with was connection and attunement. It wasn't struggling so much with permissive or authoritative. The problem wasn't that I was permissive, it was that I couldn't attune to my son. When you're more able to connect to your child and you're able to attune to them, that's what gives you the ability to attune to and understand your child's deeper needs and their intentions. And what that does is both strengthens your bond, and it also gives you way more clarity around where you really must set limits and where you can just kind of let go of things, right? And still set healthy boundaries for everyone involved. So being connected to yourself is really essential for setting those kinds of limits and boundaries. And if you grew up in a home where that wasn't present, until you do your healing work around that, you'll tend to either swing from one side to the other. But the clarity often will stay muddled, right? So when you do your healing work or get some help with setting boundaries, your boundaries and limits, you not only get clearer in them, but my experience is that you actually also get heard in a different way, both by your kids and the other people in your life, including your partner. And what I mean by that is, I've had multiple experiences over the years where I said something, and I'm pretty sure I was using, similar or the same words as I was saying 5 years ago. But once I've done some healing work around that issue, and the emotional charge has been kind of drained from that situation or experience, I am able to set a boundary, and the people that I'm setting the boundary with actually hear my voice and they respect it differently, whereas they may not have respected it at all in the past. So it's huge. So just to summarize, when you've been raised in an authoritative home or one where emotional attunement was lacking, you probably will encounter some situations in which you have trouble attuning to yourself, and thus you have some lack of clarity. And you also have some situations where you have a trouble attuning to your child or figuring out where to set those limits. And the label of permissive parent suggests, I don't believe that it's relevant here. And I feel like it sounds judgmental, because it suggests that you have some choice in either permitting your child to do something or not permitting them to do it. When in actuality, you're operating from a more automated part of your nervous system wiring that got set up from how you were parented in your childhood. I believe it's much more compassionate and accurate to recognize that you're struggling with connection. And also knowing that it's connection that you're struggling with and not permissiveness versus authoritarian can also really help you to choose a path and strategies that can help you change the pattern in your family. So rather than judging yourself as permissive and trying to then just swing to the other end of the spectrum and set limits and coming down hard on your child, which if you have a sensitive, spirited child, generally doesn't work very well. It often doesn't work very well with any child, but it's harder with your sensitive, spirited kids. So rather than judging yourself for being permissive, even when it feels wrong or when it feels like it disconnects you from your child, you can instead focus on learning how to connect with yourself and your child or get the help that's needed. So again, I believe that this language is important not only in being compassionate with ourselves, but helping us recognize the path that we need to take and what we need for support to do things differently. So I help parents with that kind of connection. There's lots of resources out there. I'll post some more related links to videos below if you're interested in reading or listening to more on this topic. Thanks for listening today. Also, if you have any questions, just pop them in down below. Thank you.